All right, we'd like to welcome Will Zalatoris into the interview room here at the Sony Open in Hawaii, making his first official start on the PGA Tour since the spring of 2023. Will, welcome back. If we can get some comments on your health and how much you're looking forward to this season.
Yeah, I've always loved coming to Hawaii. Been fortunate enough to have a really great family tradition of going to the Big Island for most Thanksgivings. I love it here. It's obviously one of the most beautiful places on earth, but I feel great. Bahamas was probably a little bit, in terms of health-wise, I felt great, but in terms of like where I was in terms of sharpness, I knew it was going to be a lot of trial and error. So, but it was really good to get one competitive rep under my belt. Spend a month at home, work on my game a little bit with my coaches, and I got a lot of kind of intel, if you will, that week. So I feel really good. Been playing some really nice golf at home, and I think the difference is now is that I think I'd only had about 2-3 weeks of where I was able to play 2-3 days in a row at home. Now there's no restraints, and it took me about a year and a half to finally get to this point, and there were times where I thought I was 100% when in reality I wasn't 100%. But now I definitely feel the best I felt in quite some time.
All right, good to hear. We'll go straight into questions. Flash has a microphone. Start with Kevin.
Well, so when you mentioned not feeling 100% or feeling 100% but not being there looking back, is there any example of a time between the nine where you felt like you were but it wasn't quite there and you would have done something different if you had kind of thought of it differently?
Yeah, I think I think I was trying to do. I kind of got away from my DNA and my golf swing a little bit for a while, and going through a change, and really the rehab that I did, and from October of 22 to December of 22, it helped, but it didn't solve the problem. It was kind of just putting a Band-Aid on on something that needed way more. And so I had 6 months to really be at home, really think about the time over 22, just because 22 was kind of shot out of a cannon for me. And I think that really being able to process how I want to swing the golf club again. What are some things that I need to change in my daily habits? I've definitely seen the benefits, and the kind of the adage of, I don't know who told it to me, but injuries are 80% mental and 20% physical. I've definitely learned that the hard way, because this is definitely the first major injury I've ever had. And so realizing that each week I'm going to keep progressing. Even if I think that I'm at 100%, I still could be better in the next coming weeks. So I played probably too much in 21, maybe a little bit too much in 22, in the sense of that I really wanted to play, really wanted to get my first win, really wanted to, was so close in those majors, and it takes a lot out of you. And I think, I've got a kind of a mental freshness and a better take of it now. And I was doing, looking at the tour schedule, and I think there's only like 5 or 6 events I haven't played on tour now, so it's not like I need to get to tournaments Monday morning anymore.
Yep, Adam.
Will, what's your level of trust in your golf swing now?
Yeah, I mean 100% now. I mean I'm doing things in my golf swing where I think the key word now is simple. I was changing things. I was changing motor patterns before. Now I'm just simplifying my golf swing. I had the big C at the finish. I had really high hands, and the way how I'd shell the club coming down is I would create that kind of reverse C coming down to the ball, and now I'm more rotary, more horizontal. And so it's a lot simpler, and so it's easier to fix. And so I think that's where, for me, I used to, 1 week I'd have to play a cut, 1 week I'd have to play a draw and time it up with my hands, and now I feel like it's more bigger muscles.
Were you farther away than you thought you were going to be?
I
When you shoot, 82, and Scotty's shooting 20 under, feel like you're so far away where it's like, I'm back and now I know what I need to do?
So I think the bigger difference is, like I go back to COVID, and for 3 months at home, we were fortunate enough at the time where I was still able to go walk and carry my bag every day. And even though that we had no competitive tournaments, I was still playing, games with really good players. I had basically been playing for 2 weeks leading up to the Bahamas. And so, of course I wanted to go out and play great. And yes, it was very frustrating to go shoot those scores. But now having a month of literally every day I'm playing money games against really good players, now I'm more mentally in it as opposed to just kind of showing up to the first tee and, seeing what happens. I mean, the example that I would probably use is cramming for a test, the night before for the Bahamas, whereas now I feel like I've been preparing for, basically December was an off season for me.
What advice would you have for Gary Little when he comes back? That's something completely different, but
I mean, he's such a good guy, and the thing with him too is that his locker is typically right next to mine since he's a W and I'm a Z. And so, I love that guy. He's just so funny. If anything, I'd be asking him advice because he's always had a great perspective on life and, having to go through what he's gone through. You hate to see that for anybody, but especially for G, just because he's just such a good guy. But I play a little golf at home with his caddy Butchie, and so, I kept checking in on him, asking how he was doing. And so, for a guy like that, he's a major champion. If anything, keep being G, and, if anything, I'll keep asking for advice from him.
Right.
You mentioned kind of being more mentally fresh now, and is there, what are kind of clues or ways that you realize that you're more mentally fresh? And are there any, examples of things you're able to do differently because you feel more fresh?
Yeah, so when I came back from I guess it was the fall of 22 going into 23, it was almost like I was trying to, I'm coming back from an injury, but then trying to just continue what I was doing in 22 and having that expectation of that level of play. And expectations in general aren't really a great thing. And so I think this time around, looking at the macro instead of the micro, I think has really given me a lot better perspective. I've had, my favorite thing to do on earth taken away from me for 8 months. And so, it's the little things that I miss, hanging with guys, even simple things as much as we hate rain delays, shooting the breeze with the guys, stuff like that. I missed it. And so I think it's given me a lot, even though shooting 1 million over in the Bahamas, it was still 72 holes of a lot of fun. And so I think that's where, to me, keep doing what I'm doing, look at the macro instead of the micro. You're going to have off weeks. These seasons are long. And so, when I look back at, 22, which was my best year on tour, I missed the cut in the Byron Nelson, which was, my home event. I've played that golf course since I was literally 9 years old. And then the next week I lose in a playoff in a major. And I barely remember the Byron Nelson. And so I think that's where, for me, not getting stuck on those little bad weeks and getting back into the rhythm of week in, week out, I think is something I'm really looking forward to.
And you mentioned playing money games back home. So when you, how many rounds do you think you played approximately between 0 and 9?
I mean, it was probably 20. But it's just the sharpness where it's, we can hit putts on the practice putting green that, trying to complete a drill, but, playing for, money, chump change or whatever out on the golf course, or trying to, not lose money in a, this putts to not lose money or this putts to win money type thing, that adds a little bit of pressure. And so I think that's where I get my practice at home, is trying to simulate some of the pressure we feel out here. Whereas Bahamas, obviously, I was never in contention whatsoever. And so it was more of let's just see where I'm at. Let's see if I can fix things while I'm out there. Let's find trends in my game. Whereas now I'm actually able to go out and, play a golf tournament.
Is there any one of those games that comes to mind from the last month that was super, memorable or vivid?
There were a few that, like making a 20-footer on 18 a couple times, stuff like that, where it's kind of fun to kind of throw like a little dagger in there, and kind of makes you feel good before you go in and have some lunch. So, like I said, it's just the pressure simulation that I just missed. I can practice as much as I want, and I can try to simulate that pressure on the practice putting green or on the driving range or the chipping green, but there's nothing like it compared to competing against guys when I can go shoot 67 and be the high scorer in the group when you're playing against some of the best players in the world every day in Dallas.
Were you able to play several events in a row, you think, at this point, or are you going to pace yourself?
Yeah, so I'm definitely going to be listening to my body a lot. Again, like the beauty of, playing the amount of tournaments that I've played in the past, I don't need to come out on Mondays now. I can show up on Tuesday. I can play 9 holes Tuesday, 9 holes Wednesday, get in a little bit of work. I may randomly add in an event, like let's say, the Friday deadline, like I might throw another one in there. So it's just going to be a lot of listening to my body at this point. But I mean, so far it's, the only thing that I've been told is try to avoid playing 3 in a row. But, if it's, when we get through that stretch around May where you have the Nelson and Colonial, that's a 20, 30-minute drive for me. I could show up Wednesday at both of those places and be fine. So that's where, I could play a 4-week-in-a-row stretch there. But, again, I have to listen to my body is the most important thing.
How much time before and after rounds do you have to spend on your back compared to what you used to do?
Yeah, the biggest change I would say is the post-round stuff. Doing ice baths after daily. The pre-round stuff hasn't changed a bunch, but the post-round, because of, if I play 3 weeks in a row, something could get off, and then all of a sudden we start playing more and more and more, and then that could lead into something for me. So I really have to be cognizant of every little detail. Something in my right shoulder could be connected to my left hip, which then could throw off something in my back, and so really the post-round stuff of trying to make sure that my body is as much equilibrium as I can is probably the most important thing and probably the biggest change.
Do you have any favorite course or thing off course you like to do when you're family went to the Big Island?
I mean, one of my probably the best memory that I have was we would always go to Mololani, and my dad and I would show up at like 6:40. Pro shop would open at 6:30. We'd hit like 10 balls. With the time change, it was easy. But we'd whiz around in like 2.5 hours. If it was on Sunday, you'd have, football on, because it comes on so early. And then you'd have the Maui Invitational in the afternoon. So it was just, Saturday, Sundays were just absolutely the best, because it was like you got in a day, you're able to play golf. I was able to get in a little bit of work if I actually wanted to, even though we were on vacation. And then I was able to watch sports all day long. So Monolani's always going to be one of those places for me that's just a haven.
All right. Anything else? One more, Kevin?
So I remember with the Cooney twins a couple years ago, I was asking you about them, and you made sure to mention both of them. I know Pearson was getting a lot of maybe more hype at the time. But what is it like when you kind of think back to them as kind of young developing players? What was it about them specifically that made you believe that they had what it took to get out of it?
Their work ethic, and I jokingly say this because I can tell them apart barely, but they both were incredibly hard workers, even going back to when they first got to high school. They have some similarities. Their golf swings are very similar. Pearson's definitely more of the mechanic, and Parker's more of the artist. But on any given day, both of them are capable of, being the low round of the day out here, or winning their first tournament, this week. And so they've always had that belief. Like I said, their work ethic was really fun, and especially when I was playing with them when they were 14, 15, and they were, shooting 66s. It's like, man, these guys are going to be ready tomorrow if they keep doing what they're doing. So they're great kids, most importantly, and so I'm about to go play with Pearson in a little bit, and so I'm looking forward to seeing these guys have some success.
Did you play with them at all over the break?
Yeah, a bunch. Yeah, so they're they're awesome. They love giving each other a hard time, but you know, the part that I think is so great, I always love the story about Coach Fields sitting him down. And I don't know how much of this was true or not, but Coach Fields sat him down and said, hey, I know that, there's going to be some competitiveness between you two. And they kind of looked at each other like, we're brothers, but we're best friends. Like we don't care, we push each other. So that's why, seeing both of them get their card, in two different ways, really, I'm looking forward to spending, the rest of our careers together.
All right. Well, Will, we appreciate your time. Best of luck this week.
Thanks.